Hello folks, and welcome to a little bit of a follow-up here to the previous preview. Alright, so there were a few questions that came from the preview. I can't technically go into crazy amounts of detail because obviously I can still only cover stuff up to Chapter 1, but I did want to address a few things that came along just for both interest and to address some of the kind of hot takes I've seen and things like that. So, for one thing, there was a question when it came to Berserkers, namely, what is the deal with them, with the Berserk being automatic? So, interesting thing, when it comes to shields, okay, like this, I know this is going to seem weird because I'm talking about Berserks for this, so when it comes to shields, I believe they actually bypass armor this time around, so basically, I was watching how the AI handled the whole situation. Like, I just figured, okay, generally speaking, they've been pretty good about putting in, you know, putting in little teacher moments into the AI in order to show how stuff's done. So, when the AI would activate Berserk, but it would be in a disadvantageous position to use it, generally speaking, they would go for the Shield Bash instead. Now, I know you're thinking, wait a minute, that's reduced damage. Oh my god, my choices! Don't worry, because it seems to, for whatever reason, do similar, basically comparable to weapon damage. Now, granted, this is Chapter 1, obviously, but generally speaking, shields are actually more of a offensive thing in this one. Like, what's interesting is the extra armor slots are not necessarily just, hey, look, there's extra armor. It's interesting how they did this. Like, I want to point out, like, before we even get into all that, every time that I've run into any mechanic where I've thought, oh wow, I can't believe that they removed, oh wait, hold on, wait a minute, they fixed it, they improved it, it's better over here in some other way. Like, I cannot stress that enough. Look, this is a game that I have been deep diving through for over a decade now, alright? Look, I love the mechanics of the PSP version. I have been loving them to death for a really, really unreasonably long time, okay? Believe me, I am a stubborn bastard. If anything changes, my immediate thought is just, oh no, hold on, let me go get my old man pants. And every single time, every single mechanic that I've had that reaction to up to this point has just resulted in the same thing of like, wait, no, they made it better. So, let me just say, on any hot takes like that, give it a second. Try it. Once you've tried it, then decide. Because, okay, so, Berserk, right. So yes, Berserk, basically, like, if you're looking at Berserkers, they're a strength specialist. Shields seem to scale off strength. So basically, they seem to still have the option to basically just not use their Berserk and go for a Shield Bash instead. But I've noticed the AI is also really good at actually making use of the, just kind of calculating out when it makes sense to use a Berserk. Like, they will specifically try to avoid friendly fire wherever possible to a far better degree than before. And what's interesting is that you can't technically combine both counterattack and Berserk on a Shield Bash build. So basically, if you want to go nuts with your Berserk, you basically will have a counterattack build. If you want to not go nuts with your setup there, then you have a parry with the option to go for a single target melee instead. So basically, you've taken what was previously a toggle and turned it into a multi-option type of situation. Now, in terms of what I was saying about the armor, why do I say that this is interesting? Well, because again, shields are a offensive option this time around. They are essentially going to be doing comparable to weapon damage while pushing a unit backwards, which means that spacing and knocking enemies into stuff has become a far more offensive option. You may notice, like, these shields in this intro here, roughly speaking, have about anywhere, like, roughly 5 to 6 points less armor threshold than they did before, which you're making up for in your extra armor over here. So what they've done is, instead of, like, they've kind of elegantly taken the original armor, combined it all into, like, hey, instead of having shield armor, you just have it on your armor now. Which is funny because, yes, it's another funny historical nod. This game loves its historical nods. But basically, as time went on, like, shields were comparatively a important thing in the early days of a lot of situations, where, you know, it was just a cheap armor you could put onto anybody, but it didn't necessarily cover everything. But then as armor evolved, you notice that, you know, less and less shields, or smaller shields, or, you know, more specific shields, or even, you know, around the 15th century, offensive shields. So, you know, you get all kinds of fun stuff as far as that goes. Now, this is interesting because I'm wondering what that actually entails for the later game, because if you remember, the original purpose of the shields in the PSP version was actually to give you resists and proofs against certain things. Now, as we see, no resists, but the resists are just something that you slap on and you already have more or less kind of as good as it's going to be right here, which, by the way, these feel about... I would say pretty much every skill that's in here, just kind of as it is, feels roughly about equivalent to 2.5 to 3 ranks of how it was before. So it's roughly 40% resistance to that particular thing that you just get from having the resist skill. So you actually pretty much fully resist it, as opposed to the previous, maybe the AI won't target you with it kind of situation. Also, you don't have to be hit by it over 1,000 times in order to max it out. Just saying, nobody gets hit by Bewitched that often. Anyway, so again, any time that I've seen that it's like, here's this thing, suddenly there's an improvement. Alright, next thing, as far as pincers, this is actually way cooler than I was expecting it to be, because I thought it was just going to be a simple, you attack from behind mechanic, slap it on everybody. But it's more specific than that. You specifically have to have that unit ending some kind of damage calculation behind another unit that was receiving said damage. Why do I word it so specifically? Because you can shield bash somebody off a wall into the line of sight of somebody with Pincer and they will attack them. I found this out by complete accident, and that is hilarious to me. So yes, you can absolutely do insane nonsense like that. So Pincer, which by the way does seem to go up over time, you can get up to Pincer 2 in the intro here. So yeah, you can absolutely do some fun stuff with that. There was a question over whether Cashwell got holy water, by the way. Yes, she does. There was another question as far as how elements worked, like how important are they? Once again, they feel about equivalent to 2.5 ranks. They're about 10 attack value that you get as a base, matching the element. You get an additional, you basically double that if the other unit is weak to it. Though this does seem to have the option to scale, and I believe it actually also may function with prevailing element to some degree. Because there were moments that I noticed that the bonus seemed to be going higher than that. So at the very lowest, it seems to start off at 10. Okay, so again, feels about right to call it about 2.5 ranks of the original augment. Another question was how common are the charms, which in this particular test file I did end up using all of the charms up, but they are pretty prevalent. I believe you get one for practically every element and a couple of some of them by the end of Chapter 1. Next, there was a question of RT, which, as you can see right here, yes, RT bonus is still a thing for unique characters. Granted, not all these guys are running the same loadout, though Canopus, even if I switched him out to the same loadout, he would still wind up at the exact same RT. Total coincidence, but whatever. So, Canopus is a little faster, Denim is a little faster. You might notice that some of them are extremely minor, like Donalto is barely faster than a generic, Sarah and Voltaire are faster than him, and Ravnus is just over here just blazing by in her sports car. But, it is what it is, If she's going to look like a Lamborghini, then, I suppose she's going to go fast like one, too. Next, as far as... let's see. All right, next there was the question of the Terranite marks, which, funnily enough, was something so oddly specific that I've never even tried it. Apparently, in Lake Bordeaux, you can get a random Terranite spawn out of the skeletons, and you can exercise them in the PSP version to get Terranite marks in Chapter 1. Now, technically speaking, I don't believe there's a way to trigger a fight in Lake Bordeaux outside of the Gamp fight in this version. But I want to clarify once again, because this is always that moment when somebody pops in the comments and oh, no, state of our gaming industry, yada yada. Okay, look, chill out, it's Chapter 1, alright? Think back to the PSP version. You remember how much stuff opened up after Chapter 1? Yeah, look, get those gears turning, yeah? Alright, good. Anyway, so technically speaking, I don't believe there's a way to trigger a fight like that in Chapter 1, so you don't get Terranites, 2 steps early. Anyway, very oddly specific, but yes. So there's that. Next, there was a question about the script, namely, has anything changed script-wise? So rewording, they did mention that some of the dialogue got changed so that it sounds more natural when people are saying it, without actually spoiling anything. I have to say, I was originally thinking I was going to play without voices, and like when recording, I like to play without voices, but when it's just me playing and I'm sitting there with my headphones, I have those voices on. And yes, in English. It's grown on me, man. Anyway, I'm just going to leave it at that before I say anything more. But as far as the question on the script, yes, it all seems to be identical to PSP. So, for example, you see the other party that was not in your intro doing the actual place that you meant to be. Stuff did not go well for them. As far as very oddly specific things, like, for example, if you insult Lens 3 times in the intro, he gives you an all-lady squad. As you can see, yes, that is 100% a thing. I mean, technically, you can't say for absolute certainty that these are the units that I started with, but you're just going to have to take my word for it. But yes, that is 100% a thing. Another thing, there was a mention over, like, oh no, the archers are too weak, how dare they nerf my baby. Observe. By the way, cool thing I just now noticed, you can actually turn on the voices in the middle of dialogue. Anyway,
you would take life.
I just really like this line over here.
My intellectual curiosity and
oh man, like Nibith in particular,
similar.
who I guess I should call Nibith appropriately now.
Equally to action, and there is little difference in the number of resulting dead.
I always loved this comeback, just to say.
While you leave only death in your path, I leave a species of life.
It's like, hey, I left something behind. You just left a bunch of graves. Good job. Way to be a hero here. So okay, there was the question over, like, can you make archers good? Like, are they just a plink class now, or whatever else? I want to reiterate that while I can't elaborate further, for Chapter 1, they are most certainly a momentum class. Now, what do I mean by this? I mean, basically, they start off slow, but they start hitting real good. Now, you remember how in the PSP version, their balance was basically they hit like a truck, but they were pretty freaking slow? So their general idea here is that, yeah, like, they'll start off, like, right there, that damage is not bad. If you optimize for the one stat that they really need, they will do a pretty solid job, and from there they will just snowball as the game, as the course goes on. And I've found this to be pretty consistent. I don't believe they have any kind of armor break mechanic, but honestly, using a team of archers feels like if you've played Xenonauts and you're running all rifles, that's basically what it feels like. They start off fairly slow, and then it feels like stuff just seems to tilt in their favor more and more as the match goes on. Now, like I have noticed when leaving them on AI, you can actually leave them, doing their thing, and they'll actually be pretty good about singling out targets. So that's pretty good there. Additionally, you noticed earlier there was the question over whether weapon armor is still a thing, like namely where you can equip like skills in order to increase your armor against a particular type of weapon. As you saw there, those bows did next to nothing, while the other stuff will be doing drastically more. You just have to work for it a little bit more in that regard. Another thing, there was a... where was it? Okay, so... field props and field buffs. Okay, so the boxes and things, props in general have actually had their health lowered quite a bit. So the purpose of throwing rocks in this particular case is actually to break open boxes in many cases. So it's not just waking up units, breaking them out of charm, and just throwing them backwards. You can still do all that stuff, but you also now have the option of, like, well, I've got nothing better to do. I might as well go see if there's an extra card in that box over there. Which brings us to probably the most contentious one up to this point, which has been the cards. Now, I have to say, the reason you're probably looking at these cards and they're probably sticking out to you a bit more, is probably because, I mean, you haven't really gotten your hands on it yet. I have to say, after you play it for a little bit, these cards just become another thing in the background. They become no different from any of the other cards that were always flapping around in the background of any one of these games. I mean, remember, March of the Black Queen, you were getting cards upon capturing towns. Warren was slapping you with cards right in the intro. In the original Luck, you had cards spinning around all over the map. And again, in the PSP version, you still had cards all over the dang place. Especially towards the end game. And by the way, there you go. There's archers throwing out 600s in Chapter 1. I think you'll be fine in terms of being able to optimize them for damage. You can't get as crazy as you did before, but you can still do just fine if you want. Like, there's ways. As always was the case with this game, there's always ways. Now, yes, granted, we're out-leveling them right now, but it's really more skills and the fact that they've been stacked for decks. Because you may have noticed that there were people with kind of maxed out or max level capped characters that were having a hard time with Nibeth. So there you go. I'm still just going to keep calling it Nibeth, actually. It's just easier to say. I don't like hard Y sounds. Okay, so I promised I would get to these cards finally. So, mechanically speaking, they're not exactly something that you haven't encountered before either. In fact, they are a clever rework of several different mechanics from before. So, for one thing, you remember how you previously had 3 MP regeneration skills, and then 1 active MP regeneration skill? So you had your Meditate for basically being able to exchange your RT for MP. You had stuff like Conserve MP and all that kind of thing later on in the PSP version. But I'm excluding those for the moment. But so you still have Meditate, but more classes have access to it. Which I should mention that all cross-class things just will get those things immediately. Like, you don't have to worry about cross-classing everybody through 20 different classes. They just can equip those skills at this point, so they're just there. But what I'm saying about these cards, though, is when it comes to those MP cards, when it says MP Restoration, they mean your MP regeneration per round goes up from those ones. For the crit cards, it's interesting that it's just a crit bonus, because as you may notice, there was previously a crit bonus in the form of the luck cards. Now, you can still get luck cards, so wait, is this redundant? No. It's because, again, this entire remake was, well, I say entire, I'm talking about Chapter 1. Please forgive me for my misphrasing there. But when it comes to this preview here, we can see that luck in the PSP version was a very interesting thing. Namely, if you, say, overflowed your luck, like if you had, say, items that boosted your luck, like, for example, Denim's necklace here, if you were to have a lucky day, like, if you didn't know, there's a daily luck mechanic that's constantly going on. So, like, right here, it just gives you a luck rating from 1 to 10. So right now, it's 6 out of 10. Basically that, combined with your gear luck, combined with whatever cards you picked up during the map, would combine into your overall luck score. And this affected a lot of things, including most of your rolls. Now, if you got it too high, it got to a funny situation where you basically were just parrying everything. You were dodging things that you shouldn't have any business dodging. I mean, you more or less just could do no wrong. Now, I'm not saying this was broken, it was just kind of hilarious. But interestingly enough, you can still do that luck stuff with the luck cards, but it just increases the cards only increase your crit rate, so it's just a totally separate thing, so you're not going and creating that situation on every single map. So you're kind of still keeping the special thing from before, but you're increasing a way to potentially have a unit specializing in a crit build without having access to a bunch of luck items on everybody. So I know this sounds like a weird roundabout way to explain it, but just it feels good. I'm just going to have to ask you to take my word on it for now. I cannot say more. Aside from that, the other 2 cards are, once again, stuff that you've seen before. You remember how before you would just have practically every other character running in with Strengthen on their skill list? It's just Strengthen. But again, most folks did not understand what Strengthen was, because in a lot of cases, somebody would put on Strengthen and just never take it off, assuming that it was just the damage go up button. But it wasn't. Strengthen does absolutely nothing if you don't win the initial stats calculation, meaning that it's basically only boosting the numbers up after you've already made the right decisions in order to win. So, for example, the old PSP meta of stacking your archers for dexterity and just stacking a million dexterity bonuses on them, and then going for Strengthen to just kind of artillery your way to the end of the game. That was only possible. Like, the only reason that Strengthen kind of stuck out in that particular instance was because they were already winning the important part. They were already getting past armor, courtesy of all that dexterity. Okay, so basically, if you're not winning that initial stats contest, Strengthen does absolutely nothing, meaning that those cards are only going to be useful in very particular situations. Which does not mean, as one person put it, that a boss will simply get a hold of the card and suddenly completely dominate you. No. Because more than likely, in the original version, they probably came in with like Strengthen 3 or something right off the bat. In this case, they would have to collect 3 of those cards, which is just not going to happen. Frankly, realistically, in most cases, for most of the fight, you're going to have characters running from 0 to 2 of those cards. You're going to be able to slightly tilt them in one direction or another, and then maybe towards the end of the fight, once you start winning, you will have the luxury of going and picking up more. because if we're being realistic, in most cases they're going to be boosting damage by like 20 or so. Going and taking an attack or putting yourself in a better position is going to be far more valuable than picking up any of those cards. Can you stubbornly just go start off every fight preparing by picking up those cards? Sure, but it may not even do anything for you. So anyway, they're really more of just an extra spice on the map more than anything else. Additionally, I should probably mention the buff items. You may notice I've got buff items on all these dudes here. They actually seem to last the entire round. So if you ever wondered why in the preview pictures they seem to only carry one of these, that's why. And they're cheaper. And also I should mention the Healcraft one is definitely worth using this time around. It hasn't technically been buffed, but its value is far more in this particular case. Now are you I'm assuming already somebody's probably writing out a comment of something along the lines of, oh, it's because they removed an anatomy and I don't see Ogre Light, rah rah rah, riot. Okay, chill out. So Healcraft, right? Its purpose has always been the same. It maxes out your maximum potential healing. Combining Prevailing Element, Ogre Light, and Anatomy always gave you the same bonus as using this. But we never used it because it was just easier to dead brain it, and most of the time everybody defaulted to passives because, again, it was just easier to do. You've got so many back-to-back fights, you're usually not going to be setting yourself up with a buff. But in this particular case, because the fights are, are something that you maybe want to be a bit more involved with, then having something like a buff feels a lot more like an option. The way that they presented them, where it's just a skill list plus a little picture of every one of your items on the map, like where they have it like this, where it's like, just the menu is all of your items next to all this other stuff. Visually, it is perfect. Like, it is perfectly exactly setting up, like, here's the bubble of what your person has been set up to do. Here are their options. You're not forgetting about stuff because it's 5 menus behind over there. You're not forgetting to activate your passives because, again, like stuff like back attack, most of the time people didn't use it because it was off in the background. Stuff like instills, most of the time people didn't use it because it was off in the background. So again, all of that stuff that previously you would just overlook and overlook and overlook, that's why these are automatics now, right? This isn't a, throwing RNG rolls into your game for the purpose of mobile game crap. It's not. I've seen that argument, and that argument is just plain, just straight up wrong. That's not why it's here. Anyway, so I just wanted to clear that bit out right there. Like, for example, stuff like Wapanga or whatever else triggers when they're nearby enemies, okay? So like it says right there, it has a higher success chance as stuff goes along and all that kind of thing. But your ranks are locked to certain levels rather than be something that you have to grind up. So again, as far as those ranks, so far I have seen nothing but solid choices in terms of what went where. Like, for example, stuff like Constitution, basically same as it always was. It was always locked behind levels. Stuff like weapon ranks going up as those weapons are being used, they scale based off, like, the experience scales on how far you are behind, how you're using them, how successfully you're using them. It feels excellent. It doesn't feel like it takes too long, but it does feel like there's an investment of time to actually get them up. For example, your starting units actually do start out with some weapon ranks, so it, it actually feels like Ronway's actually giving you somebody that's worth using. It doesn't feel like he's sending you out with the wrong people as a joke, especially the Amazon that hasn't even been trained to use her weapon, which, interestingly enough, does actually come with the proper training and weapons this time, so I guess we can confirm that wasn't an intentional joke. I will still forever think it is, though. Alright. What else do we want to cover here? I believe I already covered RT, because, yeah, some of these characters are just a little bit faster. Just again, I cannot really cover more than this, unfortunately, because again, Chapter 1, and anytime that I mention, like, oh, XYZ thing is not in Chapter 1, there's always the response of, oh no, somebody removed my favorite thing. So before accidentally creating any more of those comments, let me just, again, reiterate, I can only cover this bit. Every little bit that I experience about this game, every new mechanic that I see, is that same feeling of just, they didn't remove it, they improved it, this is where it realistically should be. And like, I honestly, it's hard to go back to the original version now. Like, it is legitimately difficult to go back and compare the two side by side now. It just feels so solid. Alright, anyway, so that's That's all I can really talk about right now. And you know what? If I disappear for an extended period of time, it's because there's a bunch of stuff happening that I can't talk about. So, all right, you guys have a good one. Take care. And yeah, if you wanted any... Oh, wait. Hold on. Time out. There was a question over... Wait, 2 more things, actually. 3 more things. Dang it. All right. 3 things. First of all, the intro. Did the intro change? Yes, the voice changed because the music changed. I mean, it's fine. It's, you know how Cash was telling the story in the intro to the Zenobians? Basically, she's the one narrating that intro now. Again, I wasn't sure on it at first. I listened to it a couple times, kind of grew on me. I do wonder what happened to the original Crazy Epic voice guy, but I guess, you know, technically, lore-wise, it does kind of make more sense. But then again, you know, other dude was pretty darn cool. There was a question also about whether you could switch the voices to Japanese in that. Yep, whether you can switch to clickety-clacks, yes you can. You just do that, and whether you could speed up things beyond just fast-forward mode, and yes, you can turn skill animations into a slower version, or into a slower or faster version, I should say, like the original versions, or do you want something faster? Additionally, there was a question over... Okay, actually, so the last question that we're going to cover is over the titles. There was a question over whether your title didn't change anymore. You just pick which one you want to keep. So, yeah. You unlock your titles, you keep up your title, and you do with that what you will. Alright, anyway, so that's all I got time for. Y'all have a good one. Take care, and hope to talk to you soon.